Compass is a remarkable resource that allows all of us to have a shared basis of knowledge from which to act. And it is a great honor to serve on the Compass Governance Committee. I gotta say that I think probably the easiest part of the job is figuring out what the facts are, though I suspect that the Compass staff may not always feel that's the easiest part of the job. The more difficult question is what produced those facts and what interventions might we take to change the trajectory that we're on. And I'm honored to try to help begin a conversation about those tougher kinds of questions. What will a prosperous Minnesota look like and how will we get there? My guess is there's probably as many answers to the question as there are people in the room. There may be more answers to the question than there are people in the room, and I also suspect that a thorough answer to the question is going to take a whole lot more than the 4 hours and 20 minutes that I've been allotted for my presentation. So rather than try to cover the entire waterfront, I'm going to be very focused in my answer, focusing on what I think is a necessary condition for a prosperous Minnesota, and that is its human capital, or put differently, its skills and capacities of our people. Well, what would a prosperous Minnesota look like? Let me wave my magic wand and imagine a Minnesota that has steady growth of 3.5% or more a year. But let's keep in mind that between 1998 and 2004, we had an average growth rate in the state of 3.9%. Unemployment under 4%, but unemployment that's low enough that no sector of our community is left behind. Very vibrant business creation and growth. Innovation, the word that Paul used, that we have lots of new ideas and new products that are coming out, but also coming out in a way that we're dominating the markets that they enter. Communities that can work together, move together, change together with tremendous agility and speed, adjusting to the new opportunities that we confront, to the innovations and to the change that those innovations will produce. And ample resources to invest in our human and physical infrastructure. By that I mean transportation and education and technology and health and a whole lot more. That is the kind of investments that will ensure that in the long run, Minnesota can stay prosperous and that we have the kind of economic vitality we need in communities across our state that improve the lives of all Minnesotans. So human capital, in my opinion, is the key to that sketch of prosperity. It's the key to Minnesota's future. And in my opinion, our most precious resource is no longer our land or our rivers or our timber or maybe even our mines, but rather our people. And as Paul suggested, to compete in a global knowledge economy, our workforce needs higher levels of education than ever before. We need a robust pipeline of people who are increasingly skilled, who are going to be the innovators, who are going to help solve the big complicated problems better than anybody else has done so, that are going to create the knowledge and that have the capacity to bring those solutions to market. The workforce must also meet the needs of global production. That means the assembly, delivery, and distribution systems of a manufacturing sector in particular. And if we don't provide the workforce that those firms need to compete globally, they will have the capacity to pick up and go where the workers can be found. And that's not a recipe that's very bright for Minnesota's future. So if the critical necessary condition is human capital, how are we doing? Well, it's been over 7 years since we got the warning from Tom Friedman, not just that the world was flat, but in his words, we are not investing in our future and preparing our children the way we need to for the race ahead. 7 years ago. 7 years later, how are we doing? The world has gotten flatter, but Minnesota and America have fallen farther and farther behind in this race that Tom alerted us to. And so as he publishes his new book, That Used to Be Us, What's the first pillar he refers to when he talks about preparing for our future? Again, it's education. Here's a lagging indicator. America ranks number 2 in the world among 35 to 64-year-olds in the proportion of people who hold an associate's degree or higher. Let's look at the 25 to 34-year-olds. Where does America rank? We're down to number 10. That's a leading indicator. Another leading indicator are the math and science scores of our kids in school. We all know the gory numbers there. We're 31st among OECD nations in math performance. We're 23rd in performance in science. And those lists of not very pretty leading indicators can go on and on and on, and almost everybody in this room knows the gory details. How about Minnesota? How are we doing? And what are we going to do about it? Let me start first with how we're doing. The bottom line, we have a significant workforce shortage, and that shortage is going to grow over the years ahead. One of our state leaders put it very vividly when he said, changes in workforce needs are coming on like a freight train, and we're going to very quickly move from high unemployment to asking, where are the workers? Now, I want to focus on 3 reasons for this that go beyond the demographics, which we all understand, and those demographics are very powerful, and there's probably little we can do in the room today to change those demographic trends. But there's 3 other things that I want to alert us to. First, we have an immediate and growing skills gap. There are many good jobs out there, but there's a mismatch between the jobs and the skills of the people who are looking for jobs. And I hear from companies around our state that they simply can't find the workers with the right skills to allow them to grow the way they're prepared to grow right now. That has a huge impact on communities, has a huge impact on all of Minnesota. So the sad fact of the matter is that we have 167,000 unemployed Minnesotans without the education they need for the new economy. That's an important challenge, and we got to help. Second point, we're facing significant workforce shortages going forward, and we're not going to have the workforce with the skills into the future unless we do something very differently. By 2018, 70% of all the jobs in Minnesota are going to require some form of post-secondary education. And 83% of all the jobs being created between today and 2018 will require some post-secondary education, with less than half of those jobs requiring a baccalaureate degree, the rest requiring a certificate or a 2-year degree in some technical field. So if we fail to meet that evolving workforce need of our state, we're not getting to that vision of prosperity that we might all have in our heads. This too is an important challenge, and we have to help. My third point has to do with the pipeline. And K-12 preparation is not where it needs to be to meet the workforce needs of Minnesota. 1/4 of Minnesota's students entering high school do not finish. And if you look at most communities of color in our state, half do not finish. And many who do finish in all communities, white and minority, many are not college ready. A huge percentage of them need remedial education to begin a college level program. Minnesota now has the 3rd largest achievement gap in the country. Shameful. And that means that our fastest growing populations are the ones least prepared for higher education and least prepared for the work that needs to be done in the future and the jobs that lie ahead. And we absolutely must close this achievement gap. Businesses need a very diverse workforce to compete in a global economy. And going forward, there will be virtually no jobs that will provide a decent standard of living for those that don't have some post-secondary education. And we either solve this problem or we condemn segments of Minnesota to a lifetime of poverty. And that's unacceptable. So we must ensure that every single high school student is on a path to be college ready. And that we understand and develop the skills that they need for the work that needs to be done and get them on the right path to do that. This too is an important challenge, and together we need to help. Now, of course, all these challenges have to be confronted at the same time that our state has to eventually come head to head with its structural budget problem. This too is an important challenge, and education's done more than its fair share to help meet that challenge to date. State funding for higher education has dropped like a stone in Minnesota. Minnesota's investment per student in higher education has dropped significantly faster than the national average. If you look between 2000 and 2008 and ask what's the compound annual growth rate for investment in higher education per student, in Minnesota over those years, each year it fell 2.9%. National average fell 2.5%. The top quartile of states fell only 2%. We are no longer above average in our investment in higher education. We are now a below average state in the nation at a time when below average is no longer good enough. Below average is not even in the game. If you look just at the last 2 years, 40 states in the nation did a better job of protecting higher education than Minnesota did. That is not a recipe for building prosperity. That is not a recipe for building the workforce we need going forward. What's the impact of these changes on our system, for example? In real dollars, since the year 2000, the cut per student we serve of state support has been 48%. That gets your attention. That's huge. And as state dollars have been withdrawn, the financial burden has, of course, increasingly moved to our students. It's not that we've gotten kind of fat and lazy in higher education. In fact, the cost of educating a student in our system is actually 10% lower in real dollars. We've gotten productivity gains. It's who's paying the cost that's created the crisis of access to higher education that we're confronting, not that the actual costs have gone up. In fact, they've actually gone down. You know, education was our comparative advantage in the last century. And what I'm trying to suggest to you is we've lost the edge that was the secret sauce to our prosperity in the last century, and we got to find a way to get that edge back. So in summary, Minnesota needs a comprehensively better educated workforce. And we got to move quickly, and we got to move boldly for that to happen. So, second part, how are we going to address these challenges? Minnesota State colleges and universities are playing a lead role in trying to deliver some new solutions. And we're working very closely with Governor Dayton and his administration, in particular, Department of Employment and Economic Development, Department of Education, the Governor's Workforce Development Council, working closely with legislative leaders, with the workforce centers around the state, with our faculty and staff, with foundations, with businesses, with industries, and we're working with labor across the state to forge a collaborative plan. The plan fundamentally is about finding ways in which we work together to get it to happen. And that, I think, is part of the secret sauce of moving forward and part of my message, and I want to just share with you very briefly some of the steps we're taking. 4-part strategy. First part, we need to have a much better, much deeper, much more nuanced understanding of the precise workforce needs that businesses and industries in every sector, in every region of this state are facing. We need to know what kind of jobs need to be filled, what kind of skills are needed for those jobs, and where they see that sector going over the next 2 or 3 years. How many workers? What kind of skills? What kinds of professionals? What regions of the state are those jobs needed? And what kind of jobs in the health professions, in information technology, biotechnology, construction, financial services, and the like. And we are leading that assessment, working collaboratively, in particular with DEED and the workforce centers and foundations and the Governor's Workforce Council, because these conversations will begin in March and April of this year. And this has to be a conversation where everybody joins the conversation. Nobody in Minnesota at the end of this spring should say, no one asked me what I need. That's the first part, but it's only the first part, and that is not a one-time conversation and we pack up and go home. That is a new way of doing business. That conversation is ongoing year in and year out. We have to listen and understand. Second thing we need to do is we need to align our academic programs with what those needs are. We can't have a gap of students coming out with wonderful educations but not prepared the work that needs to be done or the work that's going to lead to a successful career. A survey done of freshmen nationally that just came out last week asked, why are you going to college? Why are you going to the university? 86% of them said, in order to get the preparation I need for a career or for work. We have that responsibility. And making sure we got the right programs in the right places, delivering the right skills to meet the jobs of the future is a core responsibility that we have in MnSCU. Not just with certificate and degree programs, but with our advanced certification programs, with programs aimed at retooling workers, and with our customized training programs that meet the needs of businesses around the state. And we must play an absolutely crucial role here. As Paul mentioned, we are responsible each year for educating over 400,000 Minnesotans. They come for degrees, they come for training and retraining, they come for our graduate programs. Our typical student is not a 19-year-old fresh out of high school, though we have many 19-year-olds fresh out of high school, but we also serve adult learners and the workers and professionals who are retooling for the changing economy. Our customized training program, which is key to this, has 6,000 business partners around the state. And each year we work with those firms to train 122,000 employees to make sure that those employees have the skills necessary both for them to thrive, but also for that firm to remain competitive. That's part of the alignment that I'm talking about. Third part is we in higher education, and I will include the entire sector, not just MnSCU, we simply have to do a better job. Our good programs need to become excellent, and our excellent programs need to be preeminent. And across our entire state, we need to be beginning conversations about how we're going to make that happen. And I have asked our faculty on every one of our colleges and universities to lead that conversation about how we ensure an extraordinary education, how we ensure that students are able to move through faster and more successfully, how we can demonstrate that the graduates that we are turning out are meeting certain core competencies that are needed for them to be successful in the world of work, anticipating what the workforce of the future is going to be, and how it is we might work collaboratively together to do an even better job to serve our students and get them through that pipeline more successfully. The key here is focusing on outcomes, not the test scores of our freshmen, but the quality of our graduates. Not how many students we turn away, but by how many students make it to the finish line and complete their certificate and degree programs. And the last part that I want to turn your attention to is the issue of the pipeline. We need to ensure that we have a pipeline of high school graduates who are ready for college and are heading to the programs that will fill the jobs that will enable Minnesota to soar. Here we're working very closely with Commissioner Brenda Casilius and her colleagues in the Department of Education and with schools across Minnesota to ensure that students from all walks of life, young and old, rich and poor, black and white, immigrants and fourth-generation Minnesotans alike, are all prepared for post-secondary education. We have to close that achievement gap. P20 Council's working on that. We've got to get more students to graduate high school on time, but with proficiency in reading and math and science. The remedial work should occur before they get to colleges and universities. And we need to have a better understanding of the skills and capacities and interests and passions of students in high school. Not every single person that goes off to college should get a BA in philosophy. I think it would be a very interesting Minnesota, but I don't think it's going to be a recipe for a prosperous Minnesota, and it may not even be the best match for each high school student. But right now, we don't have a good way of assessing college readiness for high school students and giving signals to students and parents and schools about where they are on college readiness. And it's not just about the academic side of college readiness. What's your work skills capabilities? What passions do you have? And how do we link that up with the right higher education path? And as technical education has been stripped out of high schools across our state, there's no way in which those options anymore get on the radar screen of students. And so students can be bored in high school either because they're academically bored and they're really college ready and we don't have a good path for them to do it. We got to fix that and get people to begin college when they are ready, not when the clock or seat time measurement says they're ready. And we also need to take those students that are bored because they're not on the academic track but would like to get to work with their hands and have a career in technical engineering or a career in network management or career in precision engineering, and get them immediately on that path in a way that's going to allow them to be successful and link them up to the jobs which have starting salaries of $50,000 and $60,000 that are going unfilled now because we haven't figured out how to get the pipeline to work. Put differently, grades 11 through 14 need to be rethought. And we need to do it in a way that makes it easier, more cost-effective, more efficient, where we lose fewer students and more students are prepared and on the right path for the education they need and for the jobs that we need filled in Minnesota. So keeping the doors of education open to all and creating the pathways by which students can take advantage of this education, I think is absolutely crucial, absolutely crucial. So these are huge challenges, and I hope you get a sense that, at least still being new on the job, I still have a little bit of enthusiasm left for these challenges. These are really crucial. They're what brought me to this job. Our presidents and I are committed with our board to doing three things. Number one, ensuring access to an extraordinary education for all Minnesotans. And our emphasis on is both on access and serving all Minnesotans, not just the top 10%, but we got plenty of top 10% kids that come out of high school into our system, but all Minnesotans have a place somewhere in our system. And the education isn't going to be pretty good, it's going to be extraordinary. And we're committed to that. Secondly, we're committed to being the partner of choice to meet Minnesota's workforce and community needs. And that's what I've been talking about. And third, we are committed to being the most cost-effective, highest value higher education option available in our state. Now, I can tell you from the few months that I've been on the job, we're not getting there as a system, and we're not going to get there as a state without each of us exercising a little courage. That is, being willing to do what's needed when it's needed. It's going to take a lot of creativity from all of us, taking the impossible and actually making it possible and figuring out how we do that. It's going to require thinking differently. It's going to require making some hard choices. It's going to require us paying a whole lot more attention to who we're serving and what the outcomes we're producing, rather than just kind of protecting our guys. If we pay attention at MnSCU on our students and on our business and community partners and the outcomes we're producing for them, we're going to get this whole thing figured out. And I think we need your help in doing it. And that's my last point. That is, none of the things I think we need to do for a prosperous Minnesota can we do by ourselves. MnSCU can't do it by itself. The business community can't do it by itself. K-12 can't do it by itself. We got to figure out new ways in which we're working together. So whether you're from Southwest Minnesota or Moorhead or Thief River Falls or Little Falls or Austin or Duluth or the Metro and all the communities in between, it's absolutely essential that we find ways to meet this call together. We got to start putting all the right people together around the right questions if we're going to get the right solutions. And we got to be willing to put some of the old prejudices and the old ways of doing things aside and think new about how we're going to get the outcomes we need for Minnesota. I also think, or maybe it's wishful thinking, that when it comes to education, not just higher education, but education, I don't think it really matters what your political ideology is. I don't think it matters what political party you belong to. I don't think it matters what corner of the state you come from. If we don't solve this one together, none of the other things that any of us care about are going to have a hope or a prayer. It's that fundamental, I think, to the future of our state. And my hope we're able to figure out solutions that will cut through some of the junk that gets in the way of what you'd like to think are otherwise reasonable people coming together to do something we need to do together for the future of our state and for communities across our state to thrive. I think the ultimate outcome here is indeed the future of our state, the vitality of our state, the future of our communities, the future of our people. This is the project I signed up for when literally 1 year ago today, the Board of Trustees decided I'd be the next chancellor. It is the project I am committed to. It is the project our presidents are committed to. It is the project I will love to work with you on over the years ahead. I think Minnesota's counting on all of us, and I think if we work together, we can deliver.